This is our legacy. We are taught from a young age to honor Mother Earth, to respect all the gifts that are given to us. Our elders, those who hold the keys to our collected wealth of knowledge, shape our livelihood, and it is by their example that we decide which path to take in life. But what happens when we, as a community, allow the teachings of our ancestors to be disregarded and disrespected? Allow the land, our land, to be devastated? Who do we become but harbingers of a once great but now lost understanding? If the land ceases to be cared for, the land will cease to care for us.
Whether we accept it or not, this is our reality. This is what we have allowed to happen, directly or indirectly. That is why it is increasingly vital to our own survival that we are the first to act. Our waters and our land will not heal themselves. If our calls for healing are put to deaf ears, we can at least say that we have tried, and that the only true failure lies in silence. We are leaders, all of us, and as Indigenous people we are imbued with a natural and intrinsic quality, one that allows us to endure even the worst of times. And above all, if we are to claim to be stewards of the land, we must first prove it.
When we set out on this project, we wanted to prove something to the community and perhaps even ourselves. Despite our age, we felt the need to search for answers, to see if anything could be done for the creek or the dump. We wasted no time beginning our investigation into what, if anything, could be done about the dump.
Oh, my name is Peter Rubin, Tonawanda Seneca, Snipe Clan. I grew up just down the street from here, and I'm here to answer your questions. I would say chemistry. My education coming out of high school, I had a math, science, and art major, all Regents, back when Regents meant something. And from there, I got a math and science degree from Niagara County Community College. And from there, a bachelor's degree from Buffalo State College, and a master's degree in chemistry from there. Most of what is in the dump is not man-made. And what we've done on this plan is taken things that are natural in its distribution, and we've concentrated it. So we have lead acid batteries, we have cadmium, lead, mercury, a lot of these heavy metals which exist. It's natural. Even uranium is natural. But we've concentrated it and we distribute it unevenly. And what happens is it gets back into our water that we drink, and it's not good for us. Well, batteries, releasing lead, lithium, cadmium, all have known health effects. That's definitely something we don't want in our drinking water. With tires, that's a breeding ground for mosquitoes, and I believe they even had an occurrence of West Nile already this year in the Buffalo area, so that's something they want to minimize. Yes. In addition to what we have down here, it was my job with the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. My job there was as a monitor for solid and hazardous waste facilities. And for about 4 years, I was at as the largest hazardous waste landfill in the Northeast United States. And then after that, I ended up with what they call RCRA subtitle D, which is a normal landfills. I'd like to see a transfer station here, and that there's a few good reasons. That it provides some control over the waste stream, and once you control your waste stream, you can have a way to monitor your waste stream. And once you can monitor your waste stream, you can actually change it. You can alter it. You can add more. As recycling becomes bigger and bigger, it not only becomes just glass and plastic, it becomes potato chip bags, drink boxes, anything with a foil in it. Eventually, those are going to get recycled. I look at Walmart with their plastic bags they're taking back. Having a transfer station and / recycle station, they could actually bring your waste back in, separate it better, so that only certain waste that cannot be recycled now will go to a landfill. When you recycle, you're taking a lot of waste out of the landfill. And when you take waste out of the landfill, that means you increase the lifespan of a landfill. And when you increase that, you decrease the number of landfills you need over a 20-year, or 30-year, or 40-year period. So there's a lot of positive things. It helps out the actual owners of the landfill, and it helps us out because we're not paying to dispose of things that could be recycled. Well, curbside pickup is probably the least amount of effort required on the nation's part to do, but it's also the most expensive. You can still do recycling, because I know, like, even waste management, you can commingle your any of your recyclables in its own container. So you can have your glass, plastic, cans, etc. in one, and have all your household putrescible waste in the other, and they will separate it for you. But it costs a lot of money. A transfer station will help reduce the overall cost in the long term, and it'll actually provide a few jobs and empower the public to actually take care of their own space. When I had no clue as to what I wanted to do, I thought engineering was going to be the thing. And all I knew was that math and science were of interest, and that I had a knack for it. And that I did the math and science because it was like the path of least resistance. Well then, okay, that's fine. But now, I ended up with multiple science degrees. And my mother finally breaks down to me and she says, all right, now you got your degree, now go out there and do something good. And that's kind of why I'm back, because I think this is the right time to do some good. So that's why I'm back.
After talking with Pete, who gave some great insight into the kind of situation we were in, we wanted to find out what the community had to say about the dump. These are some of the responses we got.
They tried having it monitored. Remember when they had somebody there all the time?
Mm-hmm, they tried that,
On the dog.
yeah, like a security guy.
Yeah, they could try doing that, but they gotta get someone to clean it first.
Yeah, who is it?
Dibble used to do it.
Who?
Old man Harry Dibble. He used to clean it.
Really?
But he's gone now, so his voice don't do it anymore.
I think it's the EPA is gonna try and help us out and try and get
back there.
Yeah, get back there and try and start cleaning it up, and or like try and bury it or something like that.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff buried back there too. How many times have they dug big holes in it?
We just looked at a picture from Google Earth. The dump is like a square mile. It goes it's a lot farther back than I thought it really was.
How far back does it go?
There's a trail and probably
Well, I know
half
when
a
you first
mile.
get back there, it goes up around and then back.
And there's a path like with that road. There's a path that turns off into another spot.
Oh,
But
really?
it's real bad.
Oh man, it really got bad.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.
All right, catch you later.
Yep. We'll see you.
I wouldn't even know where to start.
Like try and find the source.
Yeah, try to find a source of where it's coming from, because you know it's not clean.
Yeah. It's very unhealthy. What do you feel is the problem with the dump?
It's not maintained enough. I don't think somebody should watch it, I think, or something. I don't know. It needs to be taken care of, though.
Oh, definitely clean the dump out. We shouldn't be dumping anything on our land, We're disrespecting Mother Earth every time we go down there and dump trash. We gotta find a way to all of our waste to I guess, make it into a clean, more fuel efficient, and make it into a renewable resource. You know, instead of just burning it into the atmosphere and deteriorating our air that we have to breathe, and our water that our kids drink and we bathe in. So I think it'd be really good for the Tonawanda Seneca Nation to work with the EPA and the local governments and municipalities and getting it cleaned up around here, because we do have to ensure the seventh generation has clean air and clean water for our kids.
All right, thanks.
All right.
This gave us some insight into how our fellow residents felt. Could we compel others to feel the same way? Could we rally our people to action? Pete had offered us a solution, but what exactly is a transfer station? We were curious. So in order to get a better idea of what direction we were possibly headed in, he took us on a tour of a transfer station and landfill.
As we found out, a transfer station is a collection point where recycling and some garbage go to be processed, or even compacted. The Ellery landfill in Chautauqua County is a high-tech processing station, working to recycle and minimize waste. Even the energy produced by the gases released from the waste and its contents is reprocessed and generated into electricity that powers local cities and towns. It has been built responsibly and with great care. It is highly regulated and built to prevent any sort of contamination from reaching its natural surroundings, unlike our dump. Could a transfer station be a viable option for our community? We believe so. But the first step, even before we can begin to think about transfer stations, is to clean the dump and its surrounding area. We cannot leave it as it is. That is not an option.
However, while investigating the landfill, we couldn't help but come away with the message that whatever was being done now was only temporary, and that if these issues continued, they'd be someone else's problem someday. We thought, no, the problems that face us all today should not be the problems of generations to come, and that is at the core of our teachings. We left with some doubts, but we knew questioning our efforts now would do no good, and we were reminded that the worst approach to all this would have been to do nothing at all.
Next, as our investigation continued, we were able to have Dr. Shannon Seneca come speak to us. Dr. Seneca is the first Native American woman to graduate from the University at Buffalo with a doctoral degree from the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences, someone who could really motivate our people to act. We thought she could give us some scientific perspective to the possible problems facing our groundwater in terms of leakage from the dump.
So my name is Shannon Seneca. I met everybody. I just recently graduated from University of Buffalo with a PhD from the Department of Civil, Structural, and Environmental Engineering. I am an environmental engineer. I am a Mohawk from 6 Nations. I am Turtle Clan. And I'm sure that you all are familiar with the Haudenosaunee Land Agreement and the 2-row wampum belt. Well, what I like to really say about this is, the 2-row wampum belt, what it does is it represents an ideal that we are going to respect somebody else's customs and beliefs and share that river of life together. And I really feel that that can extend well beyond cultural systems, but on a day-to-day level with communication with other people. I see it especially in the academic world, where I'm working with people from many different disciplines, and they are trained to think very differently than I, and just a general respect for people. What we're probably looking at with the terms of the landfill is looking at this saturated zone, which is the actual groundwater. What the unsaturated, all we're saying is not everything is filled with water. Under the water table, all the voids are filled with water. You might be thinking, what voids are you talking about? I have a graphic to show you that in 1 minute. But the way that we want to start thinking about things is the whole system, right? So we have precipitation. Precipitation falls, and it can do a number of things. It can be infiltrated into the unsaturated zone, or it could run right over the land surface by overland flow. Once it gets into that unsaturated zone, the unsaturated zone That's where we have water, air, dirt. It can get into there, and it can either flow through there and flow into a creek, or it could even flow down farther and flow into the water table, into the saturated zone, and get into the groundwater. And the groundwater is the saturated zone. That is where you get a lot of lateral flow going to recharge our rivers. So some of this goes into the soil, and then this is considered infiltration. Okay, enough of groundwater talk. I want to talk directly applying to what you want to think about. So this is just a conceptual diagram of a landfill. You put a lot of waste in, and what happens over time, this waste and water is going to travel through this and into the subsurface. And the one you visited, I'm sure what they showed you is they had a confinement unit or a containing to where it stopped, and then they had a leachate collection where any of the water that came down they were able to pull out. And what is this leachate? They might have went over this with you, but it is produced as water percolates through landfills. The factors that affect the leachate formation include the quantity of water entering the landfill, and that's why traditionally you see, well, I guess not traditionally, more recent, contemporary traditionally, they also line the bottom of the landfill and then they cover the top of it because they don't want a lot of rainwater going into it. And so that's going to be that rainwater that gets infiltrated is going to be the water that goes in. The actual waste composition and the degree of decomposition. So the longer these landfills are around, the more decomposition that's going on. Okay, sandy clay or sandy loam. Sandy loam has a porosity of about 0.45 or 45%. That's a relatively high porosity. And a hydraulic conductivity of about 1 centimeter per hour. So that means that's about how fast water is traveling through that sand, is about 1 centimeter per hour. And just to make a comparison, let's think about this clay. Even clay that is a silty clay or a sandy clay, we're looking at 0.06. So something that is sandy loam, you have like 1 centimeter per hour, and at a clay level it's like as low as 0.06. Now, just to get away from all those numbers and equations and words that not everybody knows, we're just going to think about this in a contamination source, because we want to think about how is this going to affect people. And we have different contamination sources. It can be through an abandoned well. It could be pesticides and fertilizers. As you can see, a lot of pesticides and fertilizers, they travel, this light brown is actually the unsaturated zone. The blue is the saturated or the groundwater region. So when you get a lot of pesticides and fertilizers, those just really get into the unsaturated zone in that top surface of the soil, top chunk of the soil, and a lot of it gets transported through overland flow. But if you look at this landfill, this landfill is actually stops right here, but you get a lot of direct migration right into the water table. And once that gets into the water table, it spreads out. So what kind of contaminants are we worried about here? This is a landfill. Depending upon the characteristics of the landfill and the waste it contains, the leachate may be relatively harmless or extremely toxic. Generally, the leachate has a high biochemical oxygen demand and high concentrations of organic carbon, nitrogen, chloride, iron, manganese, phenols. Many other chemicals may be present, but what we really need to worry about is pesticides, solvents, and heavy metals. A lot of solvents are carcinogenic. A lot of heavy metals are not only carcinogenic, but they also have a lot of effects. Actually, the Great Law is what paved the way for my academic choices. The Great Law not only states about the Confederacy and how it's ran, but it also includes a large component of environmental stewardship. And Jake Thomas did a reading of the Great Law in English up at the Six Nations Reserve back in the 90s. And I seen that, and that actually influenced me into becoming an environmental engineer. Well, during the time that I seen the reading of the Great Law, and they talked about stewardship, and they also talked about how in the future that the environment would become so degraded and destroyed that the people would turn back to the natives for guidance on how to get out of the problem that they got themselves into. And I had wanted to be one of those people that they had turned into, so I felt that I needed to get educated. Well, there are a few different dangers that are associated with the open landfill. First and foremost, you do not have any idea of what is getting put into that landfill. There could be a lot of toxic chemicals that are being put into the landfill, and not knowing what's going in, you're not able to find out what you're dealing with. Another big problem is that if you have an open landfill, that means that water is going to constantly be input into that landfill. Precipitation will rain upon the open landfill, and that influx of water is going to cause more water to travel through the landfill, causing more water to exit the landfill into the groundwater. And that's only the starting point for the problems, because it's the actual potential contaminants, potential toxic chemicals that are now entering into the water table. Well, the first thing that would help would be to stop putting material into the landfill and to cover it. Because once you get it covered, then any water that is precipitated will no longer be a driving force that will cut off the influx of water. Water could still potentially get in, so you're going to also want to measure what is in that water. And at this point, if the landfill's been flowing for 50 years and it's been putting in toxic chemicals into the water, you probably really want to do some kind of characterization to find out what's in the landfill and where it is migrating towards, and potential people that are in line of danger of obtaining that into their drinking water. And I also I am not just interested in radionuclide contamination. I'm also interested in just obtaining more of a pristine environment. People really returning to the environmental stewardship, feeling that they are there to take care of the environment. And I really would like to see a lot of sovereign nations develop their own environmental programs. And then through that environmental program, we can, start becoming leaders in environmental stewardship, and then, start leading examples. And then once a lot of indigenous communities hold the only diverse lands left in the globe because they maintain that environmental stewardship. But a lot of people are moving away from that. And I think they need to return to that. It would help them as a community and as a people. But also, in essence, rather than you're concerned about, what am I doing to my neighbors, but we also want to try to police what's going on around us. So you want to make sure you're good neighbors, but you also want to kind of force the surrounding people to be good neighbors to you too.
This is not a one-day fix, and that should be obvious. This will take time and effort. We all have to be under one mind if we are to work towards a solution, whether it is curbside pickup in the short term or a transfer station for the long term. The first step is stop using that part of our own land as a dump site. The dump compromises our air quality, and our soil type, sandy loam, is the worst kind of soil to host a landfill. There are no liners beneath the dump, no safeguards, and all these toxins seep right into our soil and sink to our water table. We cannot risk any more damage being done to our territory. Yet we cannot forget about the economics. But what is money when compared to the future of our people? Even if it comes down to paying a small amount, the dividends any solution will provide are well worth the commitment. Each of us must be willing to make sacrifices in order for our community to survive.
With the dump, we might have come across a direct approach to help alleviate the situation. However, the creek is an entirely different problem altogether. The main culprits lie beyond the reach of our territory, as the creek takes a 100-mile journey from central Wyoming County to the Niagara River, only flowing through our territory for a short time. However, she is still very much our responsibility. What can be done? On the surface, she is serene and peaceful, but it is her contents that should frighten us. She carries toxins and dangerous liquids beneath, something not apparent in her appearance by the time she reaches our territory. But go farther upstream, and she tells a different story. So in order to figure out how to help stop the damage, we had to contact someone who could give us an idea of what exactly we were facing.
The committee strives to be a successful regional initiative that is a leader in achieving cleaner water, healthier habitat and ecosystem, and economic sustainability. So that's pretty much. It's a fairly large watershed, and it encompasses 4 counties. But you've got the rural counties of Genesee and Wyoming and the upper lands, and then you have Erie and Niagara downstream. And our concern is that a lot of information was being done downstream, but there's a lot of effects from upstream. And getting information, over the years, there's been data taken, but it just never seemed to move any great amount of interest into what we should do on the upstream part. It's a beautiful resource, and over the years, from back in the say 30s, 50s, and 60s, the Tonawanda Creek in this area was. It was degraded because of the septic systems that were emptying into it. There was a lot of bad publicity from down here from the septic systems leaching into or even emptying into the Tonawanda Creek. It's a collection, yeah. The human impact, obviously, I think is the biggest. Every time that you do any work in the stream, okay, that has an impact. The housing, the development along the stream, I just assume not see any development along the stream. It's my belief that if you don't want it impacted, don't put houses and industry and everything along these. You know, they should keep nice buffers. That's what I would like to see, but it's too late. You're not gonna be able to move houses or cities and things like that. But I think that the infrastructure of the septic systems, the sewage systems, and things like that still need to be upgraded, and that's not easy. I would say just don't take the water for granted. It's so important, and that anything that you can do, or any little thing that you should be proud of, being able to do even a little thing towards improving water quality. I think too many times people think they have to do something grandiose and big and something. Even if it's just something personal, you can take pride in that. It's such a wonderful resource, and it's so unrecognized, or for what it can do. I see Tonawanda Creek as an incredible resource that I keep wondering, why doesn't everybody care? Why, how could you not care? And it's just life gets in the way. Well, you probably have a better connection than we do right now. I think that people outside the Seneca Nation have very little connection. A good share of them do not understand, even if they. How can I say it? I just don't. I think that they really can feel a connection to their environment. I think that they just take it for granted.
Elizabeth had a wealth of knowledge, but what we were lacking after our meeting was a response to the issue at hand. What could possibly be done? Education was a major theme of our discussion, and we began to think of what exactly education meant to us. Did that mean educating our own people, or the greater community of Western New York? We thought, why not both? This was a perfect opportunity to prove that we are the leaders of the environmental preservation and restoration movement. We want everyone to know that we mean business. Why not take our message to the greater community, to the areas surrounding the reservation and those affected by the bad state of the creek? It was not the cut and dry answer we went in search of, but it could be a start. We need to start thinking of ways to get our message across. We will not stand for further pollution of our waterways. We must not be afraid to take our fight to the state, or even to the federal level. Residents of Batavia or Attica, for example, areas that the creek passes through, are not going to willingly cease polluting the creek, so we must help them understand the consequences of their actions. There is a disconnect between their understanding of nature and their livelihood, and as Indigenous people, we have a responsibility to return the people to the land, reconnect them with their mother. It is the only way to preserve what is left for our children, and not only in our community, but globally as well. As Dr. Seneca stated when we met with her, we must think globally now. There is not much difference between what is happening to our community and others around the world. Pollution and water contamination affect us all on a personal level, and the sooner we understand that, the sooner we may come to a consensus on where to go from here. What about the creek? What was the creek like when you were younger? What was it to you?
The creek was visible, fishable.
Okay.
We were able to fish and bring out good fish out of it. There used to be fish traps down there where the old timers used to trap fish. And they'd get them by the bushels. They'd have them fish by the bushels. Maybe there were 2 or 3 or 4, maybe 4 traps that I remember along the creek, all the way down along the creek, on the reserve.
And how has the creek changed?
Right now you have farmers up down south that are you're getting runoff from the farmland and the pastures and all that with the animal waste. into the creek. So that doesn't help the water any.
What was the creek like to you when you were younger?
It was a fun time. I used to
Yeah.
go swimming down there. It was never really what it is now. Like now, we don't know what's in there.
Yeah. How has it changed?
How has it changed? Seems like it's all overgrown. You know, than what I can remember. I haven't been down there for some years. I went canoeing down there that one summer. This was a while ago, 15 years ago. It was really fun because I've never been past the swimming hole, you know, down there this way and all the way to the Iron Bridge.
What do you think caused all these changes and problems with the creek?
Probably weather. It's been weather. Human man. Dumping, I don't know, you know, where they dump up the river or whatever. That comes down. I think it comes out of Batavia, doesn't it?
Yeah.
All that. You never know what they do.
Would you go swimming in the creek?
I think your guys' big problems are coming from where the creek comes from, the Tonawanda Creek, coming from Batavia, New York. I think there's a lot of waste coming from that direction. So you probably have to issue some sort of agreement with Batavia to stop putting waste into the creek because it's coming down and it's infiltrating the land and it's polluting the water. Obviously, take that up with the EPA. That's the level you're going to have to take that to because they are government. So you're going to have to ensure the seventh generation that you're keeping the lands and the water clean.
Well, we work on environmental issues on the territory, such as, for instance, there was some barrels that were dropped off on Judge Road, and we look into it, and we confer with the Department of Environmental Conservation for New York State. We call them, and they come and check out the barrels to make sure that they're not hazardous. And then if they are hazardous, they remove them from the territory. If they aren't hazardous, then we dispose of them ourselves. That's one of the jobs I have. The other is the Tonawanda Creek, garbage issues, anything environmental that relates to the community. We try to investigate what we can do to resolve whatever issues we have regarding that. Yes, right now we're doing some creek testing once a month with Elizabeth Bentley Huber from Batavia National Resource Conservation Service, and she and I go out once a month and we test the creek for basic parameters: dissolved oxygen, specific gravity, pH, turbidity, and that all. So we hope to do this for over a year so we can see what data we come up with, because it kind of sets a pace for what's going on in that creek. If there's any kind of discharge that is pollutant, for example, pesticides and animal feeding, manure that can discharge into the waterway. Well, I would like to see it become revitalized as a fishing source, as a food source, because that is why it was settled to begin with. We've gone back and looked in the history of Tonawanda, and the amount of fish was very abundant. It fed the community, so it had its use also, you know, because we used it as fertilizer. It was a healthy non-polluted fish, so we were able to feed the families, our ancestors. So I would like to see that, get back to that point, and approach the upstream pollution that happens, that comes down into our creek, and continue to do that, and continue to make sure that that's good water coming from the source upstream. Well, we could have a cleanup, but although we don't have really anything to clean up, it's pretty, it's in pretty good shape. I would say to continue to protect it as we get older, and make sure that upstream pollution is not there, by monitoring what's going on in Batavia, Pembroke, the communities that would affect us in the future. That would be and to make sure that we don't let any farmer on our territory plant close to the water. They should be 100 feet from the bank of the creek, any farmer, and they are not to use pesticides on our territory, so we, hopefully can make sure that that continues.
Would our ancestors recognize us today? Would they recognize the land they have left in our care? We have our teachings, we have the great law, and the Creator has given us our instructions. Are we still listening? One of the most important of our teachings is that our relationship with Mother Earth is reciprocal. She will show love to us as long as we show love to her. She is our lifeline. She is what holds us here. By dumping on our land, by allowing poisons to be mixed in with our waters, we are tainting our mother. We are abusing her. How does that reflect upon us? How can we claim to be stewards of the land when we stray from our very teachings? Unless there is a return to our values, there will be a constant and undeterred escalation that will result in the loss of everything we hold dear. If we lose our connection to the earth, we lose the connection we have to one another, and that will only be the beginning of something far worse. The question must be asked, what will be left for our children? One of our greatest fears should be leaving this world in a worse state than what it was when we entered it. We cannot waste any time. We have to be conscious of the decisions we make daily, not just when it conveniences us. We say act, but what is done? We say then, follow the lead of those we have approached here. Raise your voice, be heard. We cannot fear failure now. We have no time for fear or apprehension. We sit and watch as our land and our waters are brutalized and made sick, and the only real consequences of that is that we too shall be sickened by our own means. Has everything that has happened to this point been deserved? Can this all be fixed? We have gone in search of answers, and these are our findings. Are they enough? Each of us has a hand in this. Is it too late to atone for what we have done? That is for you to answer. We can only show you a way. It is up to you whether you follow that path or not.
When we were younger, we thought everyone was on our side. Then we grew a little and romanticized the time I saw flowers in your hair. 'Cause it takes a boy to live, it takes a man to pretend he was there. So then we grew a little and knew a lot, and now we demonstrated it to the cops and all the things we said. We were self-assured, 'cause it's a long road to wisdom, but it's a short one.